There are many times in building payrolls where the payroll is just not terrifically simple and straightforward, and reviewing the checks that we have to catch mistakes or making edits or even proactively wanting to add a lot of different layers of detail or complexity to the check is very routine, and most of our clients are in that boat. Let's take an example of how, after we've created some checks, how we would use the payroll details section to actually review those and then edit and make changes. In this particular example, let's assume that we have used the pay grid to create some checks, and let's go in and actually edit a payroll and see how we can review the information that we've created before we ever get to the final payroll totals and submission process. To do that for Platinum Pay, obviously we go to the payroll drawer. Now we're going to click on Edit Payroll. We're presented with the start screen, okay, where again we're confirming that the dates match to our expectations. In previous videos, we've talked about creating simple payrolls with pay grid and using payroll totals to review those totals and then submit. But there's a huge amount of information that and work that can happen in between. And to discuss that, we want to go into the Payroll Details button under the Editing option. Payroll Details presents us with what we call the pay entry grid. Okay, in essence, it's 3 grids. We have a pay section up here at the top. That's obviously where compensation information is going to go. There's a deduction section at the bottom left and a memo section. Those are all familiar terms to you by now. If we have a payroll in process, the first logical thing to do is to let's review for ourselves what information is out there. To do that, let's go to the top, and there's a button that kind of looks like an abacus known as the check listing button. I want you to click on that, and that will present to us a view-only tab that initially gives us kind of a 1,000-foot view of what the payroll looks like. Here we can simply see employee number, which typically is fairly meaningless to clients. But we can see our gross, we can see our net, we can see the type of check that we've created. This can be very valuable. After Platinum Pay submissions come in, our staff commonly opens those up, goes to this screen, and just scans for net checks or gross checks that just don't look right. In fact, we have all kinds of other detailed auditing processes to catch for that. But this is a great thing as a user for you to do every payroll. Go on here and just look for something that might seem odd, okay? The real power becomes, though, when you're able to drill down and see the detail. And to do that, from check listing, I want you to slide your mouse over to check detail, okay? Now, incidentally, from the beginning, we've seen that we have 5 checks created. We're on the first of those 5, and this familiar VCR button option appears. Once we've gone to check detail, now we can see all of the granular detail inside of the check. We can see this is a check built for Joseph King. Obviously, the check date's populated, but we can see the gross and all the individual taxes, the deductions that are part of it, and what those deductions are. Obviously, Code 1 is pre-tax medical. We can see all of this information. This is a really healthy process to go through each time, unless you have hundreds and hundreds of checks, and simply flip through here. Okay, let's use this as an opportunity to review as I click the work that we've done. Let's look for something that might not look right or might not be accurate or you're concerned with. It's a very comforting feeling to actually see the results of your work before you're submitting. So for instance, let's say now that we reviewed this, again, this is a view-only section. We can't do any damage here or we can't do any corrections, but this is where we see the work that we've done. Let's say we spotted something with Joe Johnson that concerned us, okay? To get out of this screen, we can hit the exit button up here at the top right. That takes us right back to the grid. Now we want to pull up Joe's check, okay? And to do that, we're going to go up here to the top left to the employee number. As we've learned through Platinum Pay, anytime we see employee number, we're presented with this box. Double-clicking it will bring up all of our active people. Now let's click in here. I'm going to scan down with my mouse. Again, lots of ways to navigate. Some people love to, and this is a terrific way, just start typing the last name and boom, find that employee. Let's double-click. That presents or that populates the number, but don't forget you have to hit enter on your keyboard to pull him from the database. Okay? Now let's take a little breather here. This is now for the first time we've actually not only reviewed our work, but now we're inside the middle of the check that we've created. Now we can really see the detail. We've got all of the gross to net breakdown at the bottom. We can tell several things. We have a couple lines of pay. This is code 0. I clicked on there, regular pay. If I didn't know what code 1, I could see that that was some commission that we made up front. Okay? There are some other things that we can tell. Initially, this DD gives an indication that this is a direct deposit employee. Okay? I want to speak real quickly to some of these options up here because these are very common to be adjusted. First, the taxes. You know, very rarely, honestly, do taxes actually get adjusted, but this is a good way for you to see, you know, the employer side of things. Just a good review tab. The info options is probably the one that gets the most use. We could do several things here for Joe. If we decided that his default of direct deposit wasn't appropriate, this is how we would shut that off. And you can see by doing that, my indicator flips to normal. On and off, on and off. Obviously, I can't turn on direct deposit for somebody unless there's credentials behind the scenes. Also, another thing that happens, we'll talk about in a later video, is adding additional checks. Often when we do that or we're issuing a bonus, maybe it's appropriate for us to change the taxation. We'll talk about that in future videos, but that's done here. And list messages, we actually have the ability to put a custom message on an employee's stub, and that's a convenient way to do that also. But let's go back to the check entry. So let's suppose for a second that we recognize that, whoops, we paid the wrong amount of commission. That's a very easy problem to fix. We can go over here and see, you know, though we have a rate of pay, he's an hourly person, we didn't put hours in there. Okay, so the math is simply just a fixed amount of money. So maybe we meant to pay $100. Okay, so all we have to do is type over that information and we can fix it. Now, you'll notice nothing's changed down here. We haven't yet asked the check to recycle. And the button that allows us to recalculate and remain in the check is the asterisk key on our keyboard. I'm going to press that now. I want you to keep your eyes here on this, and you'll see that all this gross to net will change as I now click my asterisk button. See how that recomputed? That is the shortcut for, hey, I'd like to calculate, all right, and see the results of my work. Maybe we noticed some other things. Maybe this commission needed to be booked to a different department. Also a piece of cake. This is how we can do labor distribution. All right, simply select the different department and we can recalculate by hitting our asterisk button. Okay. When we're finished, we have a couple different ways of saving this check and then continuing on with our work. The F11 key is very commonly used as our shortcut. We'll hit F11. In essence, it's the shortcut button for this normal check icon. This says, save this check, bring me back up in normal check mode, as opposed to adjustment check mode, which is a totally different video if we're making checks that are not to be printed out or run direct deposit. So if you like this normal check button, that's perfectly fine. That will recalculate and save the check. That's enough for right now. That gives you a great idea of how to adjust individual checks in the payroll details screen.